Hello, my name's Sarah. What was supposed to be a warm family dinner turned into a nightmare the moment my grandmother's trembling hand gripped mine. She whispered, "You're in danger. Leave. Now." At first, I thought maybe her age was playing tricks. But then I saw the looks across the table, the forced laughter, the way their eyes avoided mine. That's when I realized my own family wasn't just hiding secrets, they were planning to erase me. Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments below, because you're about to hear how one warning saved me and how close I came to losing everything. I could feel my stomach twist the moment I stepped through my parents' front door. The house smelled like roast chicken and fresh rolls, the kind of meal meant to feel comforting, but all it did was remind me how many of these family dinners had ended with me leaving in tears. I forced a smile as I hung my coat, hearing the chatter from the dining room. They were already at the table, voices rising and falling like a chorus I was never really part of. Sliding into my seat, I smoothed my napkin over my lap. My brother looked up from across the table and smirked. "Still single, huh? Guess some people like their freedom too much." His wife laughed a little too loudly, her eyes glinting in my direction. I chuckled softly, the kind of laugh you use when you want the moment to pass. "I'm fine, thanks for asking." "Fine?" my sister chimed in. "That's what people say when they don't want to admit they're lonely." The words stung, though I kept my face steady. I'd grown used to these digs, about being the youngest, about not marrying on time, about not climbing some invisible ladder they all seemed to measure life by. I kept telling myself I wouldn't let it get to me tonight. Grandma sat next to me, her posture a little stooped, but her eyes sharper than anyone else's at the table. She hadn't said much yet, just quietly cutting into her food. I reached for the salad bowl, and that's when I felt her frail hand grip mine. So suddenly I almost dropped the tongs. Her fingers trembled, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're in danger. Leave. Now." For a moment, the room blurred. I turned my head slightly, meeting her glassy eyes. "Grandma, are you sure?" I whispered back, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Please," she breathed, her lips tight. "Trust me. Something's very wrong." I froze. The table buzzed with laughter. My siblings telling stories about vacations and new cars, my parents nodding proudly. Nobody noticed us. Nobody ever really did. Part of me wanted to brush it off. Maybe she was confused. Maybe her mind was slipping the way Dad sometimes hinted. But the urgency in her voice, the way her hand squeezed mine, it didn't feel like confusion. It felt like a warning I couldn't ignore. I forced myself to take a bite of chicken, pretending to listen to the conversation, but my mind was racing. What did she mean? What could be so wrong here in this familiar dining room under the chandelier that had hung above us since childhood? The comments kept coming, disguised as jokes. "Remember when you dropped out of that law program? Best thing you ever did," my brother said, chuckling. His wife leaned closer to him, murmuring, "She was never cut out for it anyway." My sister added, "At least you found something easy to do. Counseling kids? That's sweet." Their words felt like paper cuts, small, but piling up until the sting became unbearable. I kept smiling, nodding, pushing food around my plate. Inside, though, my pulse wouldn't calm. I glanced at Grandma. She wasn't eating, just watching me, her jaw set, her hand still trembling slightly on the edge of the table. I dabbed my lips with the napkin, forcing a calm tone. "Excuse me," I said lightly. "I think I need to take a quick call." Nobody paid me much mind, though my sister muttered, "Probably her imaginary boyfriend." I stood, smoothing my dress, my legs shaky. Grandma's eyes followed me, steady and filled with something I couldn't quite name, fear, maybe, or certainty. Stepping into the hallway, I pulled my phone from my purse, trying to steady my breathing. The house felt suddenly colder, the laughter from the dining room echoing like it belonged to strangers. I pushed open the front door and stepped out into the cool Ohio night. The air smelled of damp leaves, and I wrapped my arms around myself, heart pounding in my chest. Just as I tried to breathe, my phone buzzed in my hand. The message on the screen made me freeze. As I stepped out into the cool night air, my phone buzzed with a message that froze me in place. The cool air hit my face, sharp enough to wake me from the fog of the dining room. I stood there, my phone trembling in my hand as the screen lit up. The message glared back at me. "Don't go back inside. They're waiting for you." For a second, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. I blinked hard, but the words stayed the same. My pulse quickened, echoing in my ears. I glanced back at the window, the laughter from the dining room spilling faintly into the night. Through the glass, my family looked like they were having the perfect evening, clinking glasses and smiling. But something about it felt staged, almost too polished, like a scene rehearsed for an audience. My thumb hovered over the phone screen. Who could have sent this? My mind scrambled through possibilities. A prank, a wrong number, or something darker. I thought about Grandma, her hand squeezing mine, her whisper slicing through the noise. "Please, trust me." Maybe she hadn't been confused after all. The porch light flickered overhead, the bulb casting long shadows across the yard. I took a step closer to the window, peering through the slats of the blinds. My brother leaned in toward my sister, whispering something that made her laugh a little too sharply. Dad raised his glass, his smile wide, but his eyes didn't look joyful. They looked cold. I shivered. I debated walking back in, sitting down, and pretending everything was fine. After all, this was my family. What kind of person leaves their grandmother sitting at that table if danger was real? But then the phone buzzed again. "Check under the old oak tree, now." My breath caught. The oak tree. It had stood in the backyard since before I was born, its thick branches like arms spread across the sky. I remembered playing beneath it as a child, pretending its roots were secret tunnels. I glanced over my shoulder. The street was empty, silent except for the faint hum of a neighbor's air conditioner. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on me. A faint movement caught my attention. In the dining room window, just for a second, I could have sworn someone shifted the blinds, as if watching to see if I'd come back in. My skin prickled. I slipped down the steps, careful not to let the porch boards creak too loudly. The night air grew colder as I made my way around the side of the house. Gravel crunched softly under my shoes, each step feeling heavier than the last. I tucked the phone into my pocket, keeping my hands free, though they trembled slightly. The backyard stretched out in shadow, lit only by the faint glow of the neighbor's porch light. The oak loomed in the distance, its silhouette dark against the sky. My heart raced with every step closer. I considered calling the police. My hand brushed my phone, but I froze. What would I even say? My grandmother whispered that I'm in danger, and now I'm getting texts about a tree. They'd think I was paranoid. Maybe even delusional. And if it was my family behind this, they'd know I'd called. I reached the tree, its roots gnarled and breaking through the soil. My breath came in short bursts now, every sound amplified. The rustle of leaves, the creak of a branch in the wind, the faint clatter of a dish inside the house. I hesitated, scanning the yard one more time. No movement, no voices, just the heavy weight of silence pressing in. Slowly, I crouched down, brushing my hands over the cool dirt at the base of the trunk. The ground felt damp, the scent of earth rising with each movement. My fingers traced the uneven ridges of roots, searching for... "What?" I whispered under my breath, barely audible. "Grandma, what have you gotten me into?" Then, just as I was about to give up, my fingertips scraped against something hard, metal. I dug more carefully, brushing away soil until a small metal box emerged from beneath the roots. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering. Who had put this here? And why now? As I wrapped my fingers around it, a new thought struck me. What if someone was watching me right now, waiting to see if I'd find it? I swallowed hard, gripping the box tighter. Whatever was inside, it wasn't meant for just anyone to find. And it might be the reason Grandma had told me to leave. My breath hung in the cool night air as I steadied the small metal box in my lap. The ground was damp where I knelt, earth clinging to my fingers as I brushed away the last bit of soil. The box was old, its corners worn, the latch stiff with rust. For a moment, I just held it, listening to the muffled laughter drifting from the dining room. The sound should have been comforting. It had been years since I'd heard my whole family together like that. But tonight it felt wrong. Too loud, too cheerful. I slid my thumb under the latch and forced it open. The creak seemed far too loud for the quiet yard, and I froze, glancing back toward the glowing windows of the house. No movement, just the shadows of my siblings moving around the table, wine glasses in their hands. Inside the box, a bundle of papers lay folded neatly, their edges yellowed with age. On top sat a small flash drive, its silver body gleaming faintly under the porch light. My chest tightened as I picked up the papers first. The top page was a property deed, our family home. My eyes darted over the legal words until they caught on the names at the bottom. Not mine. I shuffled quickly through the stack, my heart pounding harder with each page. The second was a handwritten will, the paper fragile from years of handling. The handwriting was unmistakable, my grandmother's, neat and deliberate. I skimmed to the section I dreaded most. My name wasn't there. Where I should have been listed, my sister's name was written instead. My throat went dry. Grandma had always told me the house and land would be divided fairly among us, that all of her children and grandchildren would be treated equally. But here I was, erased. The world tilted. 100 small moments slammed into me all at once. My mother's casual dismissals when I asked about family finances. My sister's smug smile last Thanksgiving when she mentioned taking over someday. Even Dad's silence, that blank stare when I brought up the future of the house I'd poured years into maintaining. I'd brushed it all off, told myself I was being too sensitive. Now I saw it for what it was. Preparation. My hands trembled as I set the papers aside and picked up the flash drive. A part of me hesitated. I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it held. But Grandma's whispered plea echoed in my head. Please, trust me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, slid the drive into a small adapter, and pressed play. At first, just static. Then her voice, frail but firm, as though she'd recorded it in secret. They planned this for months, she said. I tried to stop them. They want to cut you out, take everything, and tonight they'll make sure you can't fight back. Please don't let them. Don't let them take everything from you. The recording ended abruptly. My breath caught, tears stinging my eyes. She'd known. She'd tried to warn me, even beyond the whispers at the table. I looked back at the house. Their laughter was louder now, almost forced, like they were putting on a show for each other. I imagined them raising glasses to a future where I didn't exist in the family story at all. Rage flared in me, sharp and bitter. For a moment, I wanted nothing more than to storm inside, slam the papers on the table, and demand answers. But Grandma's warning replayed in my mind. Leave. Now. I clutched the box to my chest, every muscle in my body taut. I couldn't go back in there. Not tonight. Not until I knew exactly what I was up against. Just as I closed the box, the creak of the back door cut through the night. My head snapped up, my heart hammering. Then a voice, low, almost a whisper, called my name. The sound of my name whispered through the darkness made my blood run cold. I turned sharply, clutching the box closer to my chest. The back porch light threw a faint glow across the yard, just enough for me to see a familiar figure stepping out of the doorway. It was my cousin Aaron. His shoulders were squared, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the yard until they landed on me. He shut the door quietly behind him, and for a split second, the laughter from the dining room muffled again, like the walls were swallowing their celebration. You weren't supposed to see that, he said low, his voice cutting through the cool night air. He took a few slow steps forward, hands half buried in the pockets of his jacket. Put it back, now. My pulse hammered in my ears. What are you talking about? I whispered back, trying to keep my voice steady, though every nerve in me screamed to run. He gave a dry, humorless laugh. Don't play dumb. You think you were just lucky enough to find that box by accident? No, it was meant to stay buried. The weight of his words sank heavy in my chest. Grandma had tried to warn me, now here he was, confirming it. I'm not giving it back, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My grip tightened on the metal box, my knuckles pale. This is mine to know, and I deserve to know. His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper so sharp it could cut. If you walk away tonight, you'll never step foot in this family again. Do you understand me? They've already made up their minds. Tomorrow, the lawyer finalizes everything. You were never supposed to find out. My stomach clenched. I thought back to Grandma's recording, her trembling plea echoing in my mind. They planned this for months. Suddenly, it all clicked. The smug looks, the dismissive comments, the silence whenever I brought up the future of the house. You all really think you can erase me like that? I said, my voice low, fury bubbling under the surface. Pretend I never existed? Aaron's expression hardened. It's not pretending. It's moving on. You've always been the weak link, and everyone knows it. This is how it has to be. The words cut deeper than I expected, even though I'd heard variations of them my whole life. Weak link, invisible, unwanted. But tonight, standing under that massive oak tree with the truth in my hands, I realized I wasn't powerless anymore. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my trembling hands. Grandma wouldn't want this, I said firmly. And you know it. He smirked, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, just a crack in his confidence. Grandma doesn't get a say anymore. You're the only one still listening to her ghost. The laughter inside the house grew louder, a hollow chorus that seemed to mock me. My gaze flicked toward the glowing windows. I could almost picture my siblings raising glasses, toasting to my absence, sealing a future I wasn't supposed to be part of. I stepped back, keeping the box close, and Aaron mirrored me with a step forward, closing the space again. You can fight all you want, he said, lowering his voice further. But if you open your mouth, you'll regret it. You'll be on your own for good. I swallowed hard, but instead of fear pinning me down, a steady fire rose in my chest. Maybe being on my own was better than staying silent and erased. I'd rather stand alone, I whispered, than keep pretending this family hasn't already thrown me away. Aaron's jaw tightened. He reached out suddenly, his hand aiming for the box. My heart leapt into my throat, my grip instinctively locking around it. Before his fingers touched the lid, a sharp voice rang out from inside the house. Where is she? The room fell quiet. Even Aaron froze, his hand suspended midair. The sound of that voice from inside sent a chill through me. Aaron froze, his hand still suspended above the box, his eyes flicking toward the kitchen door like a child caught red-handed. My chest tightened as the back door creaked wider, and there she was, my sister Claire, standing with her arms crossed, her sharp eyes immediately locking on to what I was clutching. Well, well, she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. I should have known you couldn't keep your nose out of places it doesn't belong. Aaron stepped back quickly, like he'd just been handed off the problem. I could feel his relief. He wasn't the executioner. Claire was. I wasn't snooping, I said firmly, though my voice trembled under the weight of her stare. I was following Grandma's warning. Claire's lips curled into a mocking smile. Grandma's warning? She barely knows what day it is anymore. Her eyes darted to the box. Hand it over. You don't want to embarrass yourself further. The laughter from the dining room softened into hushed murmurs, as though the whole house was leaning in to listen. My heart pounded, but I tightened my grip, refusing to let go. Aaron muttered under his breath, Just give it back before this gets worse. I shot him a look, but Claire moved closer, her heels clicking against the tile as she stepped into the dimly lit kitchen. The air felt heavier with each step she took. You don't understand, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I found more than papers. There's proof of what you're all planning. Grandma's voice. She told me you've been working on this for months. Claire's smile vanished, replaced by a sharp glare. You've always been dramatic. You twist everything into some victim story. She leaned in so close I could smell the wine on her breath. That's why nobody trusts you with real responsibility. The words cut, but I swallowed the sting. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Then, from the doorway, another voice, a fragile but steady one, broke the tension. Let her explain. We all turned. Grandma stood there, small and frail, gripping the frame for support. Her eyes, though cloudy, held a clarity I hadn't seen in years. Grandma, Claire started, forcing a laugh. You should be resting. This isn't— Enough, Grandma interrupted softly, but her voice carried more power than I'd expected. You think I don't know what you've been doing? I may be old, but I'm not blind. For a moment, silence blanketed the kitchen. I felt a surge of hope rise in me, enough to hold my ground. Claire's eyes flickered, her composure slipping before she forced it back. Mom always said you were too sentimental, she hissed. This isn't about you, Grandma. This is about the family. All of us agreed. It's time to cut her out. She doesn't belong in the decisions anymore. The words hit like a physical blow. My chest ached, but anger pushed its way through the hurt. A family decision? I repeated, my voice low but steady. Or just you making sure I disappear once and for all? Claire didn't flinch. Call it whatever you want. Tomorrow the lawyer finalizes everything. You'll be out of the picture, legally and permanently. And frankly, it's for the best. My fingers trembled around the cold edges of the box, but I wouldn't release it. I looked at Grandma, her eyes brimming with a mix of sorrow and pride, and I realized this was the moment she had prepared me for. The kitchen walls seemed to press in around me, the muffled voices from the dining room turning into a steady hum, like a storm building on the horizon. I drew a deep breath, forcing down the panic, and met Claire's gaze head-on. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. I'm not backing down, I whispered, my voice cutting through the tension like glass. I tightened my grip on the box, and for the first time in years, I looked my sister dead in the eye and said, Not this time. Claire blinked. Just once. But it was enough. For the first time, I saw hesitation flicker in her carefully polished armor. Still, she didn't flinch for long. She leaned away, smoothing the front of her blouse like she hadn't just been challenged in front of Grandma, and the whole room. Someone cleared their throat behind us. I hadn't even noticed we'd drawn a crowd. My cousin Aaron was still near the patio entrance, half stepping in as if unsure whether to defend Claire or disappear. My parents had drifted into the living room now, their arms crossed, faces taut with a mixture of tension and embarrassment. Then came the voice of someone not from this family circus. Well, the man said, stepping into the room with a leather folio tucked under one arm. This is a lively start to a review meeting. He was tall, maybe late 50s, balding but clean-cut, with a flat Ohio accent that tried too hard to be calming. The kind of voice that said, I'm just here to mediate, while quietly pushing pens into the hands of the wrong people. Everyone, this is Mr. Demings, Claire said, with a faint smirk. He's the estate attorney Mom retained before things declined. I shot a glance toward Grandma. She didn't blink, but her grip tightened on the armrest of the chair she'd sunk into. She hadn't spoken since that last firm statement. Her silence now felt loaded. Mr. Demings nodded politely at me, but didn't offer a handshake. Claire asked me to stop by tonight to walk through some updates. Procedural things. Just clarifying where the estate is and who's handling what. Claire waved a hand casually, like she was presenting a boring tax form instead of orchestrating a coup. It's just paperwork, cleaning up old stuff. Nothing personal. The box I still held in my lap felt heavier now, more like a weapon than evidence. Would now be a good time to go over a few documents? Mr. Demings asked, adjusting his glasses and pulling out a folder. Claire smiled. Perfect. He opened the folder and slid out a slim stack of forms. This version of the will, he began, consolidates authority under the primary listed executor. That would be Claire. It also excludes me, I interrupted. Doesn't it? He hesitated. It notes a change in beneficiary status, yes. And when exactly was that change made? Claire's voice cut through the tension. Months ago, after everything you pulled last year. What exactly did I pull, Claire? Showing up when Mom was sick? Paying for the mortgage when you ghosted the bills? Claire gave a little laugh, the kind that said she knew she had the upper hand. That's not how the records read. I stood slowly and placed the box on the coffee table. The room stilled. I was going to wait, I said quietly. But since we're doing this now, I opened the lid. Inside, neatly folded, were dozens of pages, bank transfers, check receipts, letters Grandma had written and never sent. One after another, I lifted them out, laying them across the coffee table like cards in a game of truth. This, I said, holding up a Wells Fargo statement, is the loan I took out when Mom was behind on the house. This is my signature. Not Claire's, not Dad's, mine. I picked up a note in Grandma's familiar looping handwriting. She used her savings to cover what we couldn't. She never told anyone. But I kept the receipts in case she ever needed to prove it. I didn't say anything after that. I didn't have to. Even Mr. Demings paused. His professional demeanor cracked just enough for me to catch it. Claire crossed her arms. So, what? You helped once? Doesn't make you a saint. I turned to her, my voice low. It was 6 years of helping. 6 years of being told I was ungrateful while I paid off the debt you all denied existed. The silence was sharp now. It cut deeper than any yelling could. And yet, I continued, you filed this paperwork. You tried to erase me, to claim I was unstable, unpredictable. Is that what you told him? I gestured to Mr. Demings. That I couldn't be trusted? Claire didn't answer. I stepped back, chest tight but steady. So tell me again. Who's really been holding this family together? Nobody moved. Then, slowly, Grandma reached forward and touched the nearest receipt with trembling fingers. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her eyes met mine, and in them was something I hadn't seen in years. Pride. I looked back at Claire. Her jaw was clenched, knuckles white. But her gaze wasn't at me anymore. It was locked on the box, calculating. And then, without missing a beat, my sister leaned forward and whispered, You think that will save you? Watch me. Her words hit me like a slap. Watch me. For a moment, the room went still. The air felt heavy, like we were all waiting for the floor to give way. Claire leaned back, folding her arms, eyes glinting like she had already won. The lawyer cleared his throat, the sound scraping against the silence. He reached into his leather folio with deliberate calm, sliding out a neatly stapled packet. Since tensions are running high, he said smoothly, I think it's best we bring some clarity. Claire has asked me to share a document that may resolve the confusion. I felt my stomach twist as he placed the packet squarely in the center of the table. He tapped the first page with his index finger. This is an agreement, signed some years back. It states that you, Evelyn, he looked at me with feigned sympathy, willingly relinquished your rights to certain assets in the estate. It was witnessed and dated. Gasps rippled from the few cousins sitting in the background, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. Someone muttered, She signed it? I stared at the paper, the bold strokes of a signature at the bottom. My name, but not my hand. Claire smirked. You don't remember. It was right after Mom's surgery. You said you didn't want the responsibility. I told you not to worry, that we'd take care of everything. You were relieved, if I recall. That's a lie, I whispered, though the word trembled more than I wanted. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. I hadn't signed anything like this. But the ink on the page mocked me, daring me to prove otherwise. For a split second, doubt crashed in like a wave. What if they'd somehow tricked me? What if in my exhaustion after all those hospital visits, I had signed something without realizing? The humiliation burned hot in my throat. I almost let the box slip from my lap. And then, Grandma's voice. Soft but steady. Enough. The room froze. Her frail hands trembled as she reached into the pocket of her cardigan. Slowly, she drew out a sealed envelope, its edges worn, like it had been waiting for this very night. Her fingers shook as she placed it on the table, sliding it toward me. I prayed I'd never need to use this, she said, her voice cracking but firm. But I won't sit silent while lies take root. Claire's face drained of color. Grandma, don't. But Grandma raised her hand, silencing her. She nodded at me. Open it, child. With shaking hands, I tore the seal. Inside were notarized letters, receipts, and a sworn witness statement, dated the very same week as the so-called agreement. My eyes blurred as I scanned the words. The witness, a longtime family friend, had confirmed I was never present for such a signing. The notary seal gleamed faintly in the dim light. At the bottom was Grandma's own note, written in her familiar cursive. If you are reading this, Evelyn, it means they tried to erase you. Do not let them. The room erupted in whispers. My cousin Aaron muttered, So it was all lies. One of my uncles shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Claire shot to her feet, her chair scraping harshly against the hardwood. This doesn't prove anything, she snapped. She's confused. Her memory isn't reliable anymore. Grandma's eyes filled with tears, but her voice didn't waver. My memory is failing, Claire. But I know the difference between truth and treachery. The lawyer tried to regain control. Let's not jump to conclusions. These could be outdated. Outdated? I cut him off, my voice rising sharper than I'd intended. A legal seal? A sworn statement? That's your defense? For the first time that night, I felt the weight shift. Not fully in my favor yet, but enough to make me stand taller. I met Claire's glare head-on, the fear in me crystallizing into something harder. I placed the envelope firmly on the table, right beside the forged document. You wanted proof. There it is. Not just receipts and letters, not just my sacrifices. This. Evidence that you forged my name and tried to bury me out of this family. No one spoke. The laughter that had filled the house earlier was gone, replaced by the suffocating sound of silence and guilt. Grandma's hand brushed mine under the table, a silent push of courage. I looked at Claire and for the first time didn't see the sister I grew up with. I saw the person who had been scheming for months, maybe years, to erase me. And I vowed right then I would never let her. But just as the tide seemed to turn, the lawyer leaned forward, lips curling in a faint smile. You might want to check the bank accounts before you celebrate. The lawyer's words hit the air like a hammer blow. You might want to check the bank accounts before you celebrate. Every head in the room turned toward me. My pulse thudded against my ribs as if trying to warn me of something I already knew. This wasn't over. The chandelier above flickered slightly, casting long shadows over the untouched dishes and half-empty glasses. The laughter from earlier had evaporated, replaced by a suffocating silence. Claire leaned forward, smugness etched across her face. You really think a stack of old receipts changes anything, Evelyn? While you were out playing martyr, we were making sure you couldn't pull the rug out from under us. The accounts are already being restructured. Your name doesn't hold any weight anymore. The lawyer adjusted his tie with deliberate calm, as though this was just another boardroom meeting. Everything has been filed legally. As of this evening, the joint funds are no longer accessible to you. For a moment, it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. They weren't just erasing my name from paper. They were cutting me off from the very savings I had spent years pouring my life into. All the nights I skipped vacations, all the extra shifts I worked, all to make sure the mortgage got paid, the medical bills didn't crush us, and that my so-called family had stability. A few relatives exchanged uneasy glances. One cousin whispered, "They wouldn't," but his voice trailed off. No one wanted to meet my eyes. My breath came sharp and shallow. Panic pressed against my ribs, threatening to drown me. And then I felt it. That echo from earlier. Grandma's trembling hand squeezing mine under the dinner table, her voice barely audible. "Trust me." I reached slowly into my purse and pulled out my phone. My hands weren't steady, but my voice was calm when I spoke. "You should have thought twice before assuming I walk into battles unprepared." Claire's smirk faltered. I tapped the screen and turned it so the room could see. A series of notifications lit up the display. Fraud alerts, attempted withdrawals from the very accounts Claire had mentioned, each one flagged and blocked. "Earlier tonight," I said, my voice gaining strength, "I got these alerts. Grandma made sure I was watching. Every move you tried to make was stopped before it could clear." I looked at the lawyer. "You want to talk legality? How about explaining why these attempted transfers were under your supervision?" The room erupted in murmurs. One aunt gasped, covering her mouth. Another cousin shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "I knew something was off." Claire's face flushed red. "That doesn't prove anything. Anyone could have—" "Stop," a voice broke in suddenly. It was my cousin Aaron, his eyes darting nervously between me and Claire. He stood, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. "I can't do this anymore." Claire's head whipped toward him. "Sit down." But he didn't. His hands shook as he pointed toward the lawyer's folder. "They made me sign as a witness for that fake agreement. They said if I didn't, I'd be cut off. I didn't know how far it would go. I thought it was just a formality. But this," he gestured toward my phone. "This is too far." Gasps filled the room. One of the older relatives muttered, "So it was all lies." The lawyer's calm mask slipped for the first time, sweat forming at his hairline. Claire's voice rose, sharp and desperate. "You spineless coward! Do you know what you've done?" But I wasn't listening to her anymore. My eyes swept the table, taking in every face, some shocked, some guilty, some finally daring to look ashamed. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply leaned forward, resting my hand on the box in front of me, and said quietly, "This ends tonight. No more silence. No more pretending." No one moved. The weight of my words hung heavy, pressing down on all of us. For the first time in years, I felt the balance shift, not because I begged for their approval, but because I claimed my place without it. And just as I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, I felt Grandma's hand slip into mine again. But this time, it was cold. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and old coffee, that strange mix of sterility and exhaustion. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, their hum somehow louder in the silence of the waiting room. I sat there, my body rigid in the plastic chair, staring at the white double doors that hid Grandma from me. My hands were folded tightly in my lap, though I didn't remember putting them there. Around me, relatives were scattered like fallen chess pieces. Some sat with their heads bowed, whispering nervously. Others pretended to scroll through their phones, though their eyes were glassy, unfocused. Claire sat apart from everyone else, pale and tight-jawed, her arms crossed like armor. The lawyer was nowhere to be found. Word had already spread that he'd been taken in for questioning. I kept hearing the sound of Grandma's hand in mine back at the house, the way it had felt cold, fragile. I hadn't realized until then just how much she'd been carrying all this time. A doctor finally walked through the doors, his expression calm but serious. "She's stable," he said, looking at me. "She collapsed from stress, not from her age. Her heart's been under too much strain. We've moved her to recovery. You can see her soon, but keep it brief." The words hit me like a punch and a relief all at once. Stress. Not age. My family had nearly broken her. A murmur rippled through the room, but no one looked at me directly. Claire muttered something under her breath, too low for me to catch, then fixed her gaze on the floor. Moments later, 2 officers entered quietly. They moved with the kind of calm authority that didn't need words. One stepped toward Claire. "Miss Claire Donovan, we need to speak with you regarding allegations of coercion and financial fraud." Her head snapped up. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "This is a family matter." The officer's voice was steady. "Ma'am, please come with us." Claire stood, her chair scraping back hard against the tile, and for the first time that night, I saw real fear flash across her face. She looked at me then, eyes burning. "This is your doing." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The officers escorted her out, and the waiting room felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in. No one spoke for a long while. When I was finally allowed into Grandma's room, I walked slowly, the weight of the night pressing against every step. She lay propped up on the bed, pale but awake, her eyes finding mine the moment I entered. "Grandma," I whispered, taking her hand carefully. Her fingers, though weak, squeezed mine with surprising strength. "You listened," she said softly, her voice raspy but clear. "You saved us both." Tears burned my eyes, but I blinked them back. I almost believed them. She gave the faintest smile. "That's why I prepared this." She nodded toward the bedside table. A nurse handed me a sealed envelope, its edges worn from being held onto for too long. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter in her familiar handwriting, steady despite her frailty. It spoke of trust, of resilience, of the importance of never letting lies erase who you are. At the bottom, notarized and signed, was her will, naming me as sole executor, ensuring the betrayal ended here. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, holding her hand, the letter trembling in my other one. When I stepped back into the waiting room later, every eye turned to me. Some relatives had been crying. Others still refused to meet my gaze. A few started to mutter apologies, excuses about being pressured, about not knowing the full truth. I held up a hand. "Save it. I don't need explanations anymore." My voice was calm, not angry, and that seemed to sting more than yelling ever could. I looked around the room, letting the silence stretch. "I won't fight for a place here anymore." "I already have one, and it's not in this house." No one answered, not a single word. I walked past them all, the letter tucked safely in my bag, and pushed open the heavy glass doors to the outside. The night air was cool against my face, steadying me in a way nothing else could, and as I stepped out into the dark parking lot, I heard Grandma's words echo inside me. "Trust me." For the first time in years, I finally trusted myself,